Welcome, everyone, to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the foundational premise of a true classic in personal finance, the introduction to Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, picture this. Imagine growing up with two completely different father figures. Both of them are strong, charismatic, incredibly hardworking guys, but they possess completely opposite views on how the world actually works, especially when it comes to money. So, how would you choose who to listen to? Well, that profound tension is exactly what opens this text, and analyzing how the author navigated this agonizing choice as a highly confused 9-year-old boy gives us an absolutely amazing blueprint for understanding wealth. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. A Tale of Two Dads, The Paradox of Success.
Okay, let's dive into this, because here is where our standard assumptions about success just get completely flipped upside down. The author's biological father, who he calls his poor dad, was highly educated. We're talking a PhD who completed his undergrad in less than 2 years and studied at prestigious universities like Stanford and Chicago on full academic scholarships. Then you have his rich dad, who is actually his best friend's father. This man never even finished the 8th grade. Now, if you were placing a bet on who would become incredibly wealthy, conventional wisdom screams to bet on the PhD, right? But formal education level absolutely did not dictate the financial destiny for these two men.
See, both of these men were undeniably successful in their respective careers. They both worked incredibly hard their entire lives, and they both earned really substantial incomes. Yet, the final outcomes literally couldn't be more different. The 8th grade dropout? He died leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family, charities, and his church. The highly educated PhD dad, however, left behind unpaid bills. As a young boy, the author was caught right in the middle of this massive conflicting tension. Income and effort clearly weren't the differentiating factors here. So what was?
That brings us to Section 2, Contrasting Mindsets on Money, a Clash of Ideologies.
The divergence between these two men was just deeply ingrained in our everyday ideologies. Let's do a quick comparison. The poor dad believed your house was your largest asset. His advice? Always play it safe, avoid financial risks. He really valued government or corporate entitlement, focusing heavily on retirement plans, sick leave, medical benefits. And he taught the author how to write a flawless resume to find a good, secure job. The rich dad, on the exact other hand, believed a house is actually a liability. Instead of playing it safe, he demanded the author learn how to actively manage risk. He frankly despised the entitlement mentality, pushing instead for absolute financial self-reliance. And instead of writing a resume to find a job, he actually taught a 9-year-old boy how to write a business plan to create jobs. It's wild!
The difference in their ambition basically boiled down to a subtle but massive linguistic shift. The poor dad would always advise, study hard so you can find a good company to work for. The rich dad would say, study hard so you can find a good company to buy. Think about that for a second. It's the profound difference between actively seeking employment and actively seeking ownership. One looked at education as a path to a safe paycheck. The other looked at education as a powerful tool to acquire assets.
Section 3. The Financial Education Gap. Why the Rich Get Richer.
So, one of the text's core arguments for why the rich get richer and the middle class just struggles in debt is that the subject of money is taught at home, not in school. Schools are fantastic at focusing on scholastic and professional skills, sure, but they completely omit financial skills. Because of this, a kid can graduate with straight A's, but still carry what the author calls a poor person's financial programming. And honestly, this perfectly explains why highly educated, really smart professionals, like bankers, doctors, politicians, can earn excellent salaries but still struggle financially their entire lives. They mastered their professions for sure, but they were absolutely never taught the actual mechanics of money.
And this builds to a much larger, frankly alarming societal problem. The text points out that our staggering national debt is largely due to highly educated politicians making massive financial decisions with zero actual training in money. So you have to ask yourself, what happens when millions of people need medical and financial assistance in the future? What happens to things like Medicare and Social Security when a nation relies on parents to teach money, especially when most of those parents are already poor or struggling themselves? It really underscores why financial education is a societal necessity, not just a personal one.
Section 4. The Power of Our Thoughts. Mental Exercise as Wealth Building.
The opposing mindsets of these two men can be perfectly encapsulated by how they treated two incredibly simple phrases. The poor dad had a habit of just throwing his hands up in defeat and saying, "I can't afford it." The rich dad literally forbade those exact words from being spoken in his presence. No way. Instead, he insisted on asking, "How can I afford it?"
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the psychological breakdown of why those specific phrases matter. "I can't afford it" is a statement. The very moment you say it, you let yourself off the hook, and your brain effectively just turns off. The rich dad viewed this as the ultimate sign of mental laziness. But how can I afford it? That's a question. And when you ask a question, your brain is forced to wake up and go to work to find a solution. The rich dad was absolutely fanatical about exercising the mind, calling it the most powerful computer in the world. Just like physical exercise increases your chances for health, he firmly believed proper mental exercise increases your chances for wealth.
And this mental programming quite literally shapes your reality. The poor dad would constantly say, "I'll never be rich," and you know what? That prophecy unfortunately became his reality. But the rich dad referred to himself as a rich man even when he was flat broke after a major financial setback. He would tell the young author, "There is a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporary. Poor is eternal." He stubbornly maintained the identity and the mindset of a wealthy person, regardless of what his immediate bank balance looked like. That is powerful.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the road less traveled, making the choice.
At just 9 years old, the author made the incredibly difficult decision to listen to and learn from his rich dad, actively choosing not to listen to his own biological, highly educated dad when it came to money. And let me tell you, this wasn't just some quick weekend seminar. For the next 30 years, he was mentored. He received an ongoing, rigorous financial education that challenged absolutely everything society told him to do. It wasn't until he was 39 years old that the rich dad finally stopped the lessons, realizing that the author had fully internalized the core philosophy, that you don't work for money, but rather you make money work for you. The author frames this monumental childhood decision with his favorite poem by Robert Frost. Rejecting his own father's conventional advice was painful. I mean, imagine realizing in elementary school that the standard path of getting good grades to secure a safe job might be fundamentally flawed, but taking that unconventional road, the road less traveled by, is exactly what shaped the immense financial success of his entire life.
So what is the ultimate takeaway from this detailed summary of the introduction? It's that money is just one form of power. What is infinitely more powerful is financial education. Because look, money comes and goes, but if you have the education about how money actually works, you gain power over it. The text warns us that positive thinking alone completely fails if you don't actually understand the mechanics of wealth. Without that specific education, you're just going to spend your entire life working for money instead of building true wealth in an uncertain world.
So, I want you to think about your own internal programming for a second. Which dad's advice is shaping your financial future? Are you operating on the script of the poor dad, seeking safety, avoiding risk, and saying, "I can't afford it"? Or are you actively exercising your mind, seeking absolute financial competence, and asking, "How can I afford it?" Your answer to that question sets the stage for literally everything else. Now, this explainer has covered the foundational introduction, but it's really just the beginning. The rich dad distilled his 30 years of mentorship into 6 core lessons, which form the rest of this phenomenal book. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep exercising that mind, and I'll see you in the next explainer.